Before you say goodbye to a man, understand this truth. People do not remember the loudest person. They remember the one who moved with intention, self-control, and inner strength. Goodbye is not the end of a story. It is the moment the real psychological imprint is formed. The way you leave determines whether he forgets you tomorrow or carries you in the unseen rooms of his mind for years. Your task is simple, yet profoundly demanding. Leave in a way that reflects your essence, not your attachment. When you prepare to say goodbye, do not collapse into emotion. Do not plead. Do not explain yourself into exhaustion. The unconscious does not respond to words. It responds to energy, posture, and the emotional tone beneath every breath. The moment you withdraw your presence, his psyche shifts. He is forced to confront the space you once filled, a space he may have taken for granted. Only now, through your absence, does he meet the parts of himself he ignored while you were near. Your final moments in someone's life are not about proving your worth. They are about embodying it. Stand tall, ground yourself, let your silence say what your voice no longer needs to express. Goodbye is powerful when it is delivered from self-awareness, not from emotional chaos. If you want to be unforgettable, you must show a level of inner stability that cannot be manipulated, shaken, or guilted into staying where your soul no longer grows. Before you walk away, hold nothing against him. Release blame. Release the need to be understood. Release the need to correct the narrative. The person who truly sees themselves never fights for validation. And this is the paradox. When you no longer need to be remembered, that is when you become impossible to forget. A man remembers the woman who stood in her truth, not the one who begged him to recognize it. When you say goodbye, you must carry with you a sense of inevitability, not anger, not panic, but clarity. This is who I am. This is what I choose. This is where my path now leads. A man respects a woman whose decisions arise from her inner compass, not her insecurity. And respect is the root of being unforgettable. He may forget your words, your arguments, your tears, but he cannot forget the moment he looked at you and realized you were not leaving from weakness, you were leaving from awakening. There is a psychological law at play. The human mind fixates on what is unresolved, what is incomplete, what is not fully understood. When you walk away with dignity, without trying to justify yourself into his acceptance, you become a mystery his mind continues to revisit, not because you tried to impress him, but because you became the mirror he did not know he needed. Your departure confronts him with the truth of who he was with you and who he was not. Do not announce that you are unforgettable. Do not attempt to mark your importance. Simply be a woman who knows her value. To the degree that leaving someone does not reduce her, it reveals her. When you turn away with steady eyes and a steady heartbeat, you send a message deeper than any speech. I am complete within myself. This is the energy a man remembers in moments of silence, in the dead of night, when distraction fades and truth rises. When you say goodbye, let your final act carry symbolic weight. It might be the way you close the door gently instead of slamming it. The way you smile, not with sweetness, but with knowing. The way you walk away without looking back. These subtle gestures create a psychological imprint far stronger than dramatic declarations. The unconscious mind remembers symbols more than explanations. And most importantly, before you say goodbye, make sure you have already said goodbye internally. People sense when you are still tied to them emotionally, but they also sense when you have let go. True letting go is not cold, it is calm. It is the quiet acceptance that you no longer abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. It is the realization that the most powerful goodbye is the one spoken from a place of inner evolution, not inner emptiness. In the end, say goodbye not to be memorable, but because your path demands it. Ironically, that is exactly what makes you unforgettable. A man will never forget the woman who walked away not to punish him, not to manipulate him, but to honor her own psyche, her own expansion, her own truth. That kind of goodbye echoes not in noise, but in the silent chambers of the soul, where the deepest impressions are made. If you want to be remembered, leave with consciousness. Leave with dignity. Leave with the power of someone who has returned to herself. That is the goodbye he will never forget. Withdraw with self-awareness, not resentment. Your silence must reflect mastery, not fear. There comes a moment in every connection where you must decide whether you are staying because it nourishes your spirit or staying because you fear what leaving will expose in you. That moment is the true crossroads, the place where your inner strength is either awakened or abandoned. When you withdraw from a man, you must do it from a place of conscious choice, not emotional reactivity. Nothing is more powerful, more disarming, or more unforgettable than a woman who knows exactly why she is stepping back and does so without bitterness, without noise, without the need to punish or prove anything. When you pull away with self-awareness, your energy shifts into something controlled and grounded. You stop trying to be understood and instead begin to understand yourself. You stop chasing reassurance and start reclaiming your boundaries. You stop explaining your worth and simply embody it. This is the kind of withdrawal that carries weight, the kind that makes a man sit with himself rather than blame you, chase fantasies, or hide behind excuses. Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing him to confront what he avoided seeing when your presence made everything too easy. Most people withdraw with resentment. They disappear with anger, with coldness, with the hope that their absence will cause pain. They want to be missed from a place of ego. But that kind of withdrawal is weak, reactive, and transparent. It reveals emotional need, not emotional strength. True mastery is quiet. It doesn't slam doors. It doesn't declare its exit. It simply leaves when the soul recognizes that something is no longer aligned. And when you withdraw in that way, you create a psychological shift so profound that the other person cannot ignore it. A man may dismiss your arguments, he may ignore your warnings, he may rationalize your complaints, but he cannot rationalize your peace. He cannot ignore the absence of your emotional labor. He cannot overlook the sudden silence where your constant presence once lived. People feel calm withdrawal in their bones. It is the kind that wakes them up, that forces them to revisit their own behavior, their own patterns, their own contributions to what has now slipped away. When you withdraw consciously, you no longer fight for a place in someone's life. You simply recognize that if your presence required a battle, it was never truly welcome. This realization frees you internally. It dissolves the grip of fear. And once fear dissolves, clarity rises. Clarity about who you are, clarity about what you deserve, clarity about what you will no longer tolerate, clarity about the energy exchange that was slowly dimming your light. Your silence becomes powerful not because it is empty, but because it is full of understanding, full of boundaries, full of dignity. Silence grounded in mastery communicates what words cannot. I am no longer willing to abandon myself for this connection. You do not have to announce this. You do not have to prove this. Your energy speaks long before your voice ever could. A self-aware withdrawal does something else, something subtle yet transformative. It breaks the cycle of overgiving, the cycle of emotional chasing, the cycle of hoping someone will eventually rise to meet you. When you step back with consciousness, you interrupt the pattern that was draining you. You reclaim your center. You redirect your attention inward. You shift from being someone who bends to fit others to someone who stands firmly in her own shape. And this is where the psychological imprint is created. Not in the drama, not in the confrontation, not in the emotional explosion, but in the quiet reclamation of your power. A man feels it when you detach from a place of self-knowing rather than pain. He may not admit it immediately. He may not understand it consciously. But something in him recognizes the shift. Something in him feels the loss not of you, but of the version of you who tolerated more than she should have. This kind of withdrawal doesn't force him to chase you. It forces him to face himself. It awakens the unconscious. It pulls forward truths he avoided, truths about his behavior, his effort, his intentions, his inconsistencies. When your silence is steady and non-reactive, it exposes every place where he took your presence for granted. It reveals everything he didn't appreciate while he still had access to it. Self-awareness is the most attractive form of strength because it reflects someone who is anchored in their identity. When you withdraw from that place, you don't create chaos, you create respect. You create clarity. You create an energetic boundary that says, I will not remain where my spirit is shrinking. And even if he never says it aloud, he will remember the moment you stopped fighting for him and started fighting for yourself. Your withdrawal becomes unforgettable because it is pure. It is not contaminated with revenge, manipulation, or emotional theatrics. It carries the essence of someone who chose themselves with maturity, and that leaves an imprint far deeper than anger ever could. In the end, withdrawing with self-awareness is not about making him miss you. It is about making yourself whole again. When you do that, when you walk away with a calm heart and a clear mind, your silence becomes the most powerful statement you will ever make. It tells the world and him that your worth is not something anyone else defines. And that truth, once embodied, makes you a woman no one forgets. Leave a symbolic imprint, people. Remember emotional depth more than emotional noise. A moment of goodbye is not defined by the words you say, but by the emotional truth you leave behind. Human beings are not moved by volume, drama, or chaos. They are moved by what touches something ancient and unspoken within them. Emotional noise fades, emotional depth echoes. When you walk away from someone, the difference between being forgotten tomorrow and being remembered for years lies in the imprint you leave, not through speech, not through pleading, but through the symbolic clarity of your final presence. People forget arguments. They forget explanations. They forget the long paragraphs, the emotional storms, and the desperate attempts to be understood. But they never forget the moment you showed your truth without trying to force it. They never forget the subtle things, the way your eyes softened, the sincerity behind your last words, the calm steadiness of your energy when you realized you were done giving more of yourself than the situation deserved. These symbolic gestures carry a psychological weight far stronger than any outburst could. They plant themselves in the unconscious, quietly resurfacing long after you've walked away. When you leave someone, don't aim to be loud. Aim to be real. The human psyche responds to authenticity more than intensity. Authenticity creates a resonance that lingers. When you let your departure be grounded in emotional depth, clarity, compassion, understanding, you leave behind a symbolic imprint that is impossible to erase. This imprint is not about being perfect or controlled. It's about being true. The truth, when expressed calmly, becomes a mirror he cannot escape, a reflection of what he lost, not because you shouted it, but because he felt it. Your symbolic imprint might be found in the way you choose to end the story. Perhaps you choose a final sentence that carries weight, something honest, something rooted in self-respect, something that reveals the depth of your journey. Perhaps it is the gentle way you close the door behind you instead of slamming it. Perhaps it is the calm acceptance in your tone, showing you have already done the inner work to release what no longer aligns with your spirit. These subtle expressions are psychological markers, quiet but unforgettable. Emotional noise, on the other hand, is chaotic. It demands attention but not reflection. Noise seeks reaction, not understanding. It momentarily shakes someone, but it doesn't stay with them. People may remember that you yelled, cried, or pleaded, but only in fragments and without meaning. What they truly absorb, what transforms them, is the emotional depth beneath your final presence. It is the symbolic imprint of your self-awareness, your love, your restraint, your clarity, your boundaries. To leave a symbolic imprint is to communicate without forcing. It is to show depth without drowning the moment in excess emotion. It is to allow your goodbye to breathe with maturity rather than collapse under desperation. The quieter your truth, the deeper it sinks. When you can look at someone for the last time with eyes that hold both gratitude and closure, you are offering something rare, emotional honesty without emotional chaos. That is the kind of moment that etches itself into someone's memory. A symbolic imprint lasts because it contains meaning. Meaning is not built through noise. It is built through intention. When you walk away deliberately, when you make your final moment an act of self-respect rather than self-destruction, you create a memory that becomes part of their internal narrative. People replay meaningful moments, not noisy ones. They revisit depth, not drama. They reflect on what felt significant, not what felt overwhelming. To create this depth, you must detach from the need to be right or to win. You must detach from the fantasy of changing someone's mind on your way out. Let your goodbye be clean, not heavy. Let it reflect your evolution, not your fear. When you release someone with grace, you leave an imprint that their mind returns to during silence, because silence is where the psyche finally listens. Symbolism always outweighs speech. Picture a final smile that says, "I have loved, I have learned, and I am letting go." Picture the steadiness of your breath when you choose not to argue anymore. Picture the simple act of walking away, not with haste, but with presence, as if every step acknowledges your own worth. These gestures are powerful because they speak to something deeper than logic. They speak to the soul. They bypass the rational mind and enter the emotional memory, the place where the strongest imprints live. Every powerful goodbye has a symbolic moment woven into it. A moment where everything becomes clear without needing to be said. A moment where your truth glows through your calmness. A moment where the other person realizes that the chapter is closing not because you are weak, but because you are finally aligned with yourself. This moment becomes the echo that follows them, appearing in the quiet hours when they confront their own patterns, their missed opportunities, their lack of presence, or their failure to rise to the connection you offered. The symbolic imprint you leave is ultimately a reflection of who you have become. When you walk away with depth, you are demonstrating a rare level of emotional maturity. You are proving that you no longer need to drown the moment with noise to validate your experience. Instead, you allow the essence of your growth to speak for you, and that is what makes you unforgettable. In the end, emotional depth is what binds people to your memory. Not the loud goodbye, but the meaningful one. Not the noise, but the truth. Leave in a way that reflects the evolution of your inner world. Leave in a way that shows you've reclaimed your story. Leave in a way that honors the journey, not the pain. That is the imprint no one forgets. There is a power in knowing who you are that no charm, no argument, no persistence can replicate. People are drawn not to perfection, not to performance, but to presence, a presence that radiates from someone anchored in their own individuality. When you cultivate a deep understanding of yourself, when you claim your preferences, your boundaries, your values, you stop seeking approval and start projecting authenticity. And authenticity, unlike noise or flattery, leaves a lasting impression. It is unforgettable because it is rare. Most people move through life shaped by the expectations of others, bending to fit the needs, desires, and judgments around them. But the one who stands firmly in their individuality does not bend. They are a psychological constant in a world of variables, and the mind cannot ignore what is steady, deliberate, and self-owned. To stand in your individuality is not to act in isolation or to reject others. It is to refuse to surrender your essence to someone else's narrative. Many walk through relationships performing roles, saying what they think will be appreciated, acting in ways they believe will be accepted. But these performances are fleeting. They leave no mark because they are not real. The person who truly knows themselves never has to perform their choices, their silence, their boundaries, Their departures all carry weight because they emerge from an unwavering self-awareness. A man will feel this presence even before he understands it. He will sense a depth, a gravity, a clarity that is magnetic precisely because it refuses to conform. When you embody your individuality, you cultivate a sense of detachment that is not cold, but conscious. You no longer give yourself to someone out of fear, obligation, or desire for validation. You give because you choose to, and when you withdraw, you do so from a place of self-possession rather than panic. This is the kind of departure that leaves a psychological imprint. People forget what was said in arguments. They forget the details of events, but they cannot forget someone who consistently, unapologetically embodied their essence. That imprint is not merely emotional, it is structural. It reshapes perception. It establishes a standard that will remain in memory long after the interaction is over. Knowing yourself also allows you to see the truth in others. When you stand firmly in your individuality, you are less likely to be manipulated, misled, or diminished. You no longer compromise for temporary approval or superficial connection. This clarity projects strength and integrity, qualities that are profoundly memorable. A man unconsciously measures every interaction against the energy of someone who knows themselves. He registers what is authentic, what is grounded, what is whole. And when confronted with that, he is compelled to take notice, not because you demanded it, but because your presence commands it by default. Your individuality becomes a lens through which others perceive their own behavior. It illuminates their choices, their inconsistencies, their patterns. When you do not waver in your identity, it forces reflection. It forces acknowledgement. It forces them to confront the ways they engaged with someone whose self-respect was non-negotiable. And this confrontation, though subtle, is unforgettable because it comes not from criticism, argument, or noise, but from a psychological mirror you present simply by being yourself. Standing in your individuality also changes the nature of intimacy. People are drawn to those who do not lose themselves in connection because such individuals create a space where both can exist fully. The bond that forms under these circumstances is rare and profound. It is remembered not for its quantity of shared experiences, but for the quality of presence and the resonance of truth. And when such a connection ends, whether by circumstance or choice, the memory of that individuality lingers. The man recalls not just what he experienced with you, but the essence of who you were, the unyielding core that made him feel, reflect, and recognize depth he may never have encountered elsewhere. The world is filled with distractions, with people attempting to impress, to entertain, to perform. But the one who knows themselves requires no such measures. They move with a quiet certainty that does not ask for acknowledgement but cannot go unnoticed. Their power lies in their alignment with themselves. They are like a river carving a canyon, slow, deliberate, unshakable. The shape they leave behind is permanent because it is the result of consistency, not impulse. People forget the superficial, but they cannot forget what is deeply anchored in psychological truth. Ultimately, standing firmly in your individuality is a declaration to yourself and to the world. I am not negotiable. I am not defined by another's perception. I am whole, complete, and aware. And when you operate from this place, you become unforgettable. You leave an imprint not by effort, drama, or manipulation, but by the quiet, unwavering authority of your presence. The mind remembers not the loudest voice, but the one that spoke with authenticity. The heart remembers not the most dramatic scene, but the one that reflected true self-possession. And the soul remembers not the one who demanded attention, but the one who never compromised their identity, the one who stood firmly in their individuality, the one who was and is simply undeniable. There is a profound psychological law that few recognize. Presence conceals as much as it reveals, and absence uncovers what was hidden all along. While someone is constantly around you, their reactions are filtered, rehearsed, or influenced by the immediacy of interaction. Proximity allows masks to persist, excuses to form, and the real nature of attachment to remain obscured. But the moment you create distance, you introduce clarity. The unconscious, where true desires, fears, and priorities dwell, begins to surface. And when you step away, you allow the unfiltered truth of his feelings and intentions to emerge without interference, without negotiation, without your presence shaping the narrative. Distance is a mirror that proximity cannot replicate. When you are near, people behave according to expectations, social norms, or the habit of convenience. They respond to the stimulus of your presence rather than to the reality of their own inner state. They can control their words, moderate their gestures, and hide discomfort, uncertainty, or neglect. But when you remove yourself, the unconscious begins to fill the vacuum. What was tentative becomes evident. What was postponed or ignored comes to the surface. When you step away, you invite the psyche to speak in ways it could not while you were present, and what emerges is pure, raw, and telling. Allowing your departure to act as a lens requires patience and restraint. It is not about punishment, confrontation, or orchestrated drama. It is about creating space for truth to manifest. The unconscious does not respond to manipulation, it responds to reality. When you step back, you are giving reality room to operate. His attention, his desire, his respect, and his responsibility are all revealed in how he navigates the absence you create. Actions or lack thereof speak louder than any words. Anxiety, initiative, reflection, or indifference all are unveiled in the quiet that follows your withdrawal. Many fail to grasp the power of this principle because they are driven by the need for immediate validation. They want assurances, declarations, or apologies while still present. They demand attention before creating the space where clarity can arise. But those who understand the psychology of distance know that stepping away is not abandonment, it is observation. It is a way to witness the unconscious self in action. It is a test, not of obedience or loyalty, but of authenticity, alignment, and emotional maturity. Distance also challenges projection. When someone is constantly near, it is easy to project assumptions, fantasies, or desires onto their behavior. You interpret gestures through hope rather than truth, filtering interactions to fit your narrative. But absence dissolves projection. The truth is no longer filtered through your longing or your presence. It is laid bare. How he responds to your departure reveals what is real, what is motivated by genuine feeling, and what is conditioned by convenience or habit. You begin to see patterns that proximity once concealed, and in this revelation lies empowerment. A conscious departure also allows the unconscious mind of the other to confront unacknowledged dependence, attachment, or appreciation. Often, people only realize the value of what they had once it is no longer physically or emotionally accessible. But this realization, unlike the superficial guilt of confrontation, is authentic. It emerges from the psyche's need to reconcile absence with desire, presence with neglect, and behavior with consequence. Your absence does not compel action, it reflects reality back to him, and the unconscious is compelled to respond to reality. To leverage this principle, you must maintain composure and clarity during the withdrawal. Do not call, message, or probe. Do not justify or attempt to explain your actions. The moment you interfere, you dilute the psychological effect. True observation requires restraint and faith in the unconscious process. Your power lies in your ability to step away fully, to allow silence to do what words never could. When handled with consciousness, your departure illuminates not only what he values, but also what he is capable of when faced with the absence of influence or control. The unconscious response is rarely immediate or perfectly rational. It may manifest as confusion, longing, distraction, or reflection. It may also manifest as indifference, avoidance, or resistance. All of these responses are instructive. They reveal the character, priorities, and emotional patterns that proximity could not uncover. And they provide you with clarity not for manipulation, but for decision making. The truth revealed in absence allows you to see who someone truly is, separate from the story, the charm, or the convenience of daily interaction. Ultimately, letting departure reveal the unconscious is an act of psychological discernment. It is a demonstration of patience, self-respect, and strategic clarity. It teaches that presence is not proof of attachment, but absence is proof of intention. The one who recognizes this understands that love, respect, and alignment are not proven through proximity alone. They are revealed in how someone responds when you are no longer there to influence, to moderate, or to tolerate. Distance is a tool of illumination. Your absence is not a test, it is a revelation. And the truth it uncovers, however subtle, however delayed, cannot be ignored or forgotten. By stepping back, you allow clarity to emerge. You allow the unconscious to reveal what proximity once concealed. You allow reality, unfiltered and undeniable, to speak. And in that space, the one who observes with self-awareness sees the truth, sees patterns, and finally sees the man as he is, not as he pretended to be, not as he wished to be, but as he truly exists when unshaped by your presence